I've got mixed feelings about Star Trek Picard, and it looks like I'm not the only one who does. Everyone's got things they like and don't like about the show. When Patrick Stewart returned to the role of Jean-Luc Picard, it was huge because for years it had seemed like his story was over. With big stars making comebacks in the industry though, it made perfect sense, especially for him to return and get a limited series on a streaming service. Star Trek Picard's been a mixed bag for both old and new fans, and it's likely the most controversial Star Trek show to come out of the new streaming era. Some people liked Patrick Stewart's return, while others didn't like some of the creative decisions the show made about the franchise. At the recent New York Comic-Con, a new trailer for Star Trek Picard Season 3 was shown. This will be the last season and will bring together the cast of Star Trek Next Generation. With that in mind, and the fact that the new season will start next year, it seems like a good time to look back at what this show did well and what it could have done better, starting with how they changed the timeline effectively. For a series about the future, Star Trek was stuck in the past for almost 20 years. After Star Trek Nemesis came out, every other Star Trek movie or TV show was a prequel. Star Trek Enterprise was a show about the beginning of the Federation, while Star Trek Discovery took place 5 years before the first Star Trek show. Star Trek The Next Generation, which came out in 2009, wasn't only a prequel, but it also took place in an alternate reality and hinted at what the original timeline was like. Its 2 sequels happened in a different time called the Kelvin timeline. Picard was the first time in 18 years that I got to see what happened next. It even picked up with the storyline of Romulus being destroyed, which led to the Kelvin timeline. Even though it wasn't what I was expecting, it was a bold move. Since then, shows like Star Trek Prodigy and even later seasons of Star Trek Discovery have shown us more about what the future holds for the Federation, even more than what I knew before, so it feels like the franchise now has a lot of exciting new options. It wasn't all good things though. There are some pretty good reasons why people have their doubts about the series, and it's got to do with which characters were missing, and some characters were left behind in the show. The first season was rough, but one great thing about it was how it gave Picard a whole new group of friends. Even though it had some great cameos from characters from Next Generation and brought 7 of 9 from Voyager, they seemed to realize that they needed new characters to keep the show going. That's why they brought in an interesting group of people from different backgrounds to make up Picard's unique ragtag crew. What wasn't great though was seeing so many characters die as time went on. Elnor, a Romulan warrior, dies quickly in Season 2, and Soji, who was a big part of Season 1, is pushed to the side. By the end of Season 2, most of Picard's cast will have left, and the cast of the Next Generation will take their place. Sure, it'll be fun to see the original crew back together for one last time and hopefully give them a better send-off than Star Trek Nemesis, but it's definitely disappointing that Picard got rid of its new cast in favor of old fan favorites. It seems like the show was afraid to take the franchise too far, so they stuck to what they thought we wanted instead of letting the Next Generation take over, as they should have. That's not all though. The show also messed up with the way I saw it play out, and Picard shouldn't have played like a streaming show. The fact that it's a streaming show is one of the biggest problems with it. Its 10-episode season should allow for a tighter and more focused story, but the season's main idea often feels like it goes on for too long. Both Season 1 and Season 2 had stories that felt like they should be movies, but they were made to fit the format of a streaming show. This means that the episodes are hard to follow and have a lot of filler. Instead of using the extra time of the episodes to get to know the characters better, the show uses it to drag out the plot, which makes it hard to watch. Star Trek's been episodic for a long time, and it's worked out well. Even a streaming show like Star Trek Discovery often works like a traditional episode-based show, with each episode focusing on a main storyline that's resolved and leads into a longer story. People have said that Star Trek Strange New Worlds' return to standalone episodes has been a breath of fresh air in the age of streaming. Of course, I did love the way that they explored the dark side of the franchise, but what the show got right was going dark to keep the franchise's spirit alive. When the show started, the Federation was more of an isolationist group that turned its back on many of its ideals. This has been a common complaint about the show. For many of us, this went against the creative nature of Star Trek, which is supposed to be an optimistic look at the future and represent the highest human ideals. But by having the Federation back away from its core values, the show was reacting to and mirroring the United States at the time it was made, more nationalistic. Star Trek's always looked to the future, but it has also used its stories to show viewers what their lives are like now. This feeling of hopelessness pays off in the Season 1 finale when the Federation, as you've known it for years, finally shows up with all their resources. The Federation's only as good as the people who make it, and even though they got lost, they found their way back to their ideals through hope and optimism. We didn't just see that in the first season, they stuck to this and showed me that the show's still redeemable. Now, the show's not perfect, but it did things that haven't been tried before. This continues into the second season when the Federation and the Borg can finally work together. Since their first appearance, the Borg have been the main bad guys in Star Trek. To see what's been the franchise's biggest threat welcomed into the Federation shows that Star Trek's willing to move past the status quo and explore what this means for the Borg. Star Trek's always been about what will happen next, and we hope that what'll happen next will be even more daring swings. What would help Season 3's case is if some favorite characters stayed alive. The entire TNG crew should survive Picard Season 3. TNG always took death more seriously than TOS, avoiding the red shirt trope in favor of more introspection and empathy. A big chunk of the cast dying in Season 3 of Picard wouldn't only be shocking, but it also wouldn't fit with the tone of what had come before. Star Trek's future kinda depends on TNG's legacy. Strange New Worlds may be a prequel to Star Trek, the original series, but its success is clearly based on TNG, with its focus on character-driven, episodic stories about extraordinary people. That's all for how successful Picard's been. What do you think the show gets right or wrong? See you in the next one.